Hey y'all, so we're back with another video that's probably gonna take me months to upload, weeks to film. Gonna miss a bunch of stuff, but we're gonna give it a shot. So, big step here. We're gonna be removing the engine. For sure, this is gonna take a few weeks to film because over this next week or so, I'm just gonna be prepping, basically disconnecting little things here and there to get the engine ready to pull. And then next weekend, we will hopefully get the engine out of the car. I have taken the first step of removing the downpipe. Pretty easy process. Oh, first of all, I just gotta give a huge shout out to my buddy Enrique for lending me this quick jack. Obviously you gotta get the car pretty high up in order to get the cradle, the engine out from the bottom. And this is just an easy way to get the car up with little to no effort. I mean, at the push of a button. The hardest part is just aligning everything with the jack points of the car. And as you can see there, I have it on the pinch weld. A couple jack stands holding it up still, just for safety measures, just because I was under the car messing with the downpipe. But huge thanks to that guy. This is really gonna help it out, help make the process easier. As far as getting the downpipe out, pretty straightforward. Let me get my handy little flashlight. So that bolt there, there's two more on the bottom. It's a 3-bolt flange there, 15mm socket. We'll get those guys out. Depending on if you've gotten that out before, it may or may not be a little tough. These I was able to do by hand with a ratcheting wrench. The other side, on the other hand, which is the 2-bolt flange that goes to the rest of the exhaust, those I had to use a little cheater pipe to get broken loose, but they're off. So don't forget to disconnect your O2 sensor. And that's the first part. First of all, what I wanted to hear, just for gits and shiggles, is the car with open header. So it's gonna be crazy loud, but figured what the heck, why not? We got it off, so let's see what it sounds like. It is a quiet Sunday afternoon, so I'm about to hopefully not wake them up. It doesn't matter at this point, but it's about to get really loud. Hopefully not crazy loud. So from what I've seen online, it looks like one of the more intimidating parts of this engine removal is actually the removal of the fuse box. Obviously, I already tucked that guy away. I got my wiring running through the side there. So that's one less thing that I have to do. Now I have access to all the mounts already, the shift linkages, all the wiring, and everything that's gonna need to be taken apart. So the next thing I'm gonna do is get the intake out of here. 2 clamps here, and it'll slide out. So I'll slide this piece out through here, and then this will just pull out from the top. And there it is, that's that part. And this isn't going back in, but another thing to do that I am about to start doing is keep track of all your bolts and nuts and screws or whatever else you're removing. This is from the exhaust. It's the only thing I've taken off so far. So I remember what those are. But I'm gonna start putting these in baggies and writing on them with Sharpie to identify what they are so we know where they go when we're putting everything back together. Okay, so as you may be able to tell, I failed miserably at catching the coolant that I just released from the radiator. This is the hose that you loosen up. It's on the driver's side. This is technically the lower hose. It's about midway up through the radiator. The next part is the brake booster line. This one's a little bit tricky. It's not very hard to do, you just gotta be real careful with it. In order to get it off, this is like a little C-clip in here. So you have to pinch the sides down and push from this direction away from me, this way, and pulls out. Obviously it's all plastic, so if you force too hard, it's gonna break. Try not to do that. And then from there, it pulls out. So that clip just sits right underneath this ridge here, and that's what keeps it on. And the next part is this fuel line. So the first thing we want to do for that fuel line is go to the back of the car, and it's like it's on the other side. So I'm just gonna go open up my cap here. So that should relieve some pressure for when you remove this line. Hopefully you'll have maybe a little less leak out. So this is actually my first time undoing this, but I'm assuming this little clip here comes out, it locks it in, I'm assuming. And yeah, so I'm gonna need a fuel line tool. So I'm gonna try out this little trick. I've actually done it before once whenever I removed the fuel filter. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this probably about here to get basically just a little tube. So there we go. Got my tube, and this thing actually still closes, I think, as much as it needs to. And the next part, I'm gonna cut a slit down the middle right here, just down the side. Let's see if it'll slide over one-handed. Slide it in there, give it a good little push. See what we can do. There it is. Okay, that's why I need to clean up that coolant. Okay. So you can kind of see what it's doing here. So there's a little clips in the fuel line, and basically you're trying to use, what the tool does is it pushes those clips out to the side enough to where they can reach over that ridge. So that's why our little cap worked, but almost had me smash my face into the car. And the next thing you'll want to do, which actually kind of goes back to something that you'll want to do as a preparation, you'll want to get your AC lines evacuated. Basically, you'll want to get rid of the Freon that's in there and possibly vacuumed to clean out the system. But that way, when you break these lines loose, you don't have to worry about any AC leaking, Freon leaking. Also, it's illegal to do it without a machine, to just like evacuate it into the air, just as a side note. But do as you wish with what you got, and just understand that that's the case. So it'll be this line that we'll have to remove. The one that goes around the side, I don't think should be in the way. But this one for sure comes off the firewall and goes into the compressor. So you'll want to remove this one. I already loosened it up. So I think it can stay where it is, because when we're pulling the engine, it's going to come out of the bottom. So this hose is just going to sit up top. Anyways, it's not really going to be in the way, but just to get it loose, that way you don't have to worry about it snagging when you're trying to get the engine out. There it is. Okay, I got another trick for you guys. So in the case that you have to remove your axle nut in order to get your your axle shafts out, if you don't have somebody here to press the brake with you, because it's a critical part, you won't be able to spin that axle nut, especially if it's pretty tight on there. You're not gonna be able to turn it without having the brakes on or something to keep the rotor from spinning. So check this out. So a quick and easy thing to do, I know this is gonna be spinning this way, so I can drop this in here, right in there like that. So now, when I put my breaker bar on here, 30mm nut for the axle. There it is. And it broke loose. You pull your screwdriver out and put it back in because I have to loosen up the nut, but there it is, it's loose. No brakes needed. So there are a few ways you could do this. You could remove the subframe with the suspension attached. I think I'm gonna try my best to leave everything here the way it is. Ultimately though, if you're gonna do it this way, you will need to remove your tie rod and your sway bar linkage. These are both 19 millimeter nuts there. And then the last thing will be your ball joint. It's this piece back here. It is a through bolt. So you have a 16 on the head side and a 15 on the nut side. The bolt sits here in this groove, going across through the hole. So once you remove it, since this is a straight shaft, I don't think there's any hammering or anything that has to happen unless it's seized on there for some reason. But in my case, as soon as that bolt is out, you're able to move this stuff around by hand. So that's what it should look like. I'm gonna do the other side now and then go from there. Okay, so now I got this suspension taken apart. It's ready to go. So the next thing for me, and this is gonna be a little bit different, I believe, than if you were to do this prior to removing the fuse box, is I'm gonna remove every single connector. So I should have one more O2 sensor left, cam sensor, a couple other things up here, and then all the way across, I have all the wiring down there. And I think, if I remember correctly, what you guys would do with the fuse box is a lot of these can stay connected to the engine until you remove it, because the connectors are up here. So you can drop the engine and the connectors will drop with it. Because I did some extensions of the wiring, all of my connectors go through here and into the cab. So I'm gonna have to remove every single connector from here and just lay it over the top, over the front, to get it out of the way so it doesn't snag when we're getting the engine out. Okay, so the harness is out. Looks a little intimidating if you haven't messed with anything like this before. It's pretty straightforward, nothing too crazy to it. It's just a matter of disconnecting until you can pull the whole harness out. So as you can see, everything is kind of was able to come up there. I also had to, since I extended the starter cable, or it's just one really long one that leads to the fuse box, I had to take that one off. So just more wires that you guys may not have to worry about if you're doing this, but it's all done. There's one, so I believe this is the AC compressor connector. It has this little metal clip on it. All you have to do is push one of those tabs back, and then you'll be able to get the clip off, and then it slides right out. So don't fight with that one too much, because that's all you need to do on that. Next thing I got to do is remove heater hoses, and for those it's just a matter of pinching your hose clamps there and there, sliding them back a bit, and then you should be able to just pull them right off. Okay, now I believe this is our clutch fitting. This guy is on top of the transmission. Okay, I think I got it figured out. So that clip, I think originally the opening should be at the top, but you can see down here the clip has an opening at the bottom. So you just slide a screwdriver underneath and pry it down. And this is actually helping me right now too. And this is the clip that you end up with. And this is what you get when you pull it out. So you can see where that clip slides in that groove down there. And I just used a screwdriver. I was using the small one at first, but I just got this bigger one and fit it in there and just kind of pried it out, and it came out. So that is that. Set it aside. Probably cap it off or cover it if you can, just so it doesn't leak or maybe get any contaminants on the inside, and set it aside. Next is our shifter linkages. It's gonna be this one and then the one underneath it. That guy right there. Focus, focus, focus. Down there. And then in order to get them off, you do kind of want to keep track of which one is which. Obviously it's pretty critical, but if they stay within the bracket down there, you should be able to keep track of them. It makes it a little easier. But so you'll just pry up on these two to get them up and over. There it is. So just like that, just that little ball that pops it in and holds it in there. So that's gonna be the same for the bottom. And then 13 millimeter and 13 millimeter. And they should just slide right out. I think we're getting down to the last few steps here. We're gonna remove our steering shaft. Just that one bolt right there, 13 millimeter. And then once you undo it, just make sure that it's free from its little bracket there. And that part should be done. And just a quick tip, if it's not facing you, facing your direction, all you have to do is turn the steering wheel in order to line it up. Okay, so now I believe we're gonna be able to get the cradle out. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lower the car on these dollies that I have over here and sit the cradle on it. I'll probably break the nuts loose for the 4 bolts before I do that. There are 4 bolts for the cradle. 1 there, same thing on the opposite side, and then 2 in the back. It is there, and then right there. Those are 21 millimeter bolts. Everything should be connected. Your transmission, your engine, all that stuff is connected. Same as your cooling system up here. I think the other thing I'm gonna do is take the crash bar off. That way, once everything sits down or if the car comes up over the engine, I'll be able to just roll it forward and then get it out of the way. Because initially I was gonna try to pull it out of the side and leave all of that stuff in the car, but I think it'll be easier just to bring it all down, push it forward, since this is what I'm gonna have to clear on this side. Once I remove that, and I don't have to worry about squeezing it all through there. So there's a lot more space that you'll get to pull the engine out. So loosen those 4, bring the car down, completely take off those 4. Then it'll be undoing these 3 here for the top mount of the engine, and then these 3 for the top mount of the transmission. And those should be the very last things holding the engine on. So whenever you lift the car up, whether you have a full like 4-post, 2-post lift or whatever, or these guys, hopefully that should be enough. We're gonna kind of play it by ear, but yeah, hopefully that should be high enough to get the engine out, which I think it should be.
Hey, let them boys go. Freaking pros. Woo! Oh my goodness.
That was miserable.
Honestly, if those freaking jacks would have worked fine, it probably would have been so smooth.
Yeah.
We had the right idea.
I know. That would have been perfect, but
I want to see the whole thing without the engine. Gosh.
there it is.
It's out regardless.
Yep. Little blood, sweat, and tears.
Where?
I don't know how much that mount was doing.
Yeah. So this is just a quick video for me to kind of document the before configuration before I start tearing everything down. But ultimately, what you didn't see or what you may see in the fast forward version of the video is we were able to get the cradle on these rollers. Undid all 4 bolts, these down here, that one, and then the ones in the back. They're covered right now. And then undid the 3 at the top over here, the 3 on the top of the transmission mount. Obviously a lot of things I'm gonna have to replace, like the axle, the steering rack probably. Our tie rod ends are pretty nasty. His boots have been off for a little bit, so they're kind of rusty. It'd probably be a good idea just to replace all that stuff and bushings, especially the transmission mount that you probably saw. Shout out to my boy Judd for coming out. Follow his channel, Hustle Anatomy. I'll link it below. It's time to start cleaning it up. I taped off all the ports that I won't want to get any water into when I start cleaning, degreasing. So yeah, it'll be nice to see everything come together. But first things first is getting cleaned up.